Hello, and welcome to Bada Boom. Today, we're ranking the movies in Marvel's Phase 2 of the MCU, all the way from Iron Man 3 to Ant-Man. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment with your own ranking list below as well. Let's get started. To start us off, at number 6 is Thor The Dark World. On my review of Phase 1, I didn't give the first Thor movie a high ranking, and this shouldn't be a surprise for this movie either. I honestly didn't even know where to start with this movie. There are times it feels like it's more about Jane Foster than Thor. Maybe this is some foreshadowing for Thor Love and Thunder. It is cool to see Thor fight in the beginning of the movie, but the villain is weak and forgettable. Like the Dark Elves, there's like nothing else I can really remember about them. And I went back and watched the trailer multiple times and read the plot. And I was like, what? I don't remember half the stuff happening. It is great to see Loki develop more and more as a character, more so than Thor does. However, the story isn't engaging enough for me, and the resolution, while good, is just more setup, which is why it is last on the ranking for this list. Number 5, Iron Man 3. Being the first movie of Phase 2, Iron Man 3 set a great tone for what's to come. We see real consequences from the Battle of New York and Tony's struggle with PTSD. Seeing Tony learn to not rely on his suits might seem like the opposite direction of where an Iron Man movie should go, but I think it worked great. We see more of Tony's humanity and relatability. I know this movie gets hated on the most out of the trilogy, but does it deserve it? It does involve a lot of new characters, and the back and forth jumps between Rhodey and Tony can be kind of distracting. The villain is a big bait and switch, not just for who he is, but how they show the Mandarin. Yeah, all these things aside, I think this movie is great because of how we see Tony grow. And for that, I've put it at number 5 on this list. Number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy. To be honest, I had no clue what to expect when I was going to see this movie. All I knew was that it was going to take place in space and it was a Marvel movie. And it turned out to be pretty great. Every character had a moment of relatability and was funny. The story progressed well, and everyone came together in a natural way. We also finally see some scenes with the big bad Thanos, and the casting was great. I think James Gunn killed it with the soundtrack too. People were buying and streaming the soundtrack like crazy. It was the number one soundtrack in America for 2 weeks. How often does that happen? There are a lot of new characters in this movie, and it's a new frontier space. This does make some of the moments given to each character to make them shine feel a little forced. But overall, this is a pretty solid movie. And for that, it's number 4 on this list. Number 3, Avengers Age of Ultron. Another's Avengers movie by Joss Whedon. If you've seen my ranking of Phase 1, you'll know I'm not the biggest fan of Joss. While I do like this movie, it still has the same shortcomings that the first Avengers had. There are several new characters, all of who need some sort of development that they do actually get. We spent so many movies prior to this one developing the core Avengers that it doesn't matter if there isn't a lot of development for them or even screen time for them. It's expected that we've seen their films, so we don't have to do a lot of setup for things to come. So it lets us focus on the story. Despite this, there's still a lot going on. Hawkeye's backstory, Wanda and Pietro, Vision and Ultron, even Claw is introduced in this movie. Not to mention the Hulk versus the Iron Man fight scene. There's a lot in this movie, and it wears me down at times. Some scenes are great, but there's just a lot that distracts from the overall story. I will say Thor got some good treatment in this movie. War Machine and Falcon had some really good appearances, and the addition of Wanda and Pietro and the Vision in the Mind Stone was great. With all this in mind, number 3 on this list is a well earned spot. Number 2, Ant Man. I often think of this as Marvel's first attempt at a comedy movie, and it did not disappoint. I had zero expectations for this movie going in, and it's still in my top 5 Marvel movies of all time to this day. We gotta admit, Paul Rudd is a national treasure. Give him a super suit, and you're asking for a hilarious movie. All that aside, I think Lewis did steal a ton of laughs. He's easily the funniest character in the entire movie. The plot is great, the jokes are on point, and it's a great way to have an older Ant Man pass the torch on to a new one. It's hard for me to find faults in this movie, so if there are some, put them in the comments below. Because of that, it has earned number 2 on my list. And at number 1, we have Captain America Winter Soldier. The Russo brothers created an excellent movie with Winter Soldier. No wonder they were asked to come back for Civil War and helm Infinity War slash Endgame. This movie is action packed from start to finish with new characters, but great development for old ones. It's great to see Nick Fury and Black Widow play a big part in this movie. The action in this takes up another notch as well. The fight scenes with Bucky have me wanting to get a metal arm eventually one day in the future. Again, it's hard to find anything wrong with this movie, so leave things I might have missed in the comments below. Winter Soldier gets my number one pick for this phase because this movie became the standard for Marvel movies going forward. I still compare new movies to this one when it comes to action, character development, pacing. There's just so much in this movie and so many great scenes. You can replay this movie in your head and not miss anything because every scene is just so good. Hats off to the Russo brothers. That's been phase two of the MCU ranked. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your own ranking in the comments below. Bada boom!